We can start whenever we are ready. We can start whenever we are ready.
Yes, I am ready. Madam?
Please start. Yes, please start.
Okay, thank you, madam. So good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Bethune College, myself, Dr. Shutapa Datta, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Bethune College, welcome you all in the international webinar on new mode of online teaching and learning, prospects and limitations in the light of human responses, organized by IQAC Bethune College. Today, we have with us Dr. Nilkanto Chakraborty, Professor and Head, Department of Physiology, University of Calcutta, and Dr. Suparna Chatterjee, Instructor and Programmatic Assistant in Maths and Science in New Mexico State University, USA, as our speakers. We are thankful to both of them for being with us and sparing their valuable times. We are also thankful to our Principal Madam for arranging this webinar, as well as to IQAC Coordinator for conducting this. So before going to the main session, I would like to mention here, though we all know, please mute your audio and switch off your camera for smooth running of the program, and paste your queries in the chat box when it's open. Now, to start the session officially, I would like to request our Principal Madam, Professor Krishna Roy, to deliver the welcome address. So over to you, Principal Madam.
Good afternoon, everybody, and very welcome to all the participants on behalf of Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Bethune College, Kolkata. Our area of discussion for today is centered around the digital mode of teaching learning process, which is going on throughout the world, and what are the effects on the human system. That means for both the educators and the learners. There is no doubt that this present pandemic has turned the world upside down, and we have entered into the era of digital learning where there is no physical classroom. We cannot meet our students face to face. Rather, we have to depend on virtual classroom where there is no as such social contact, rather physical contact, and we are using varieties of techniques which are collectively known as learning management system or LMS. But how this digital learning system affects the human body, we are yet to discover, and lots of research works are going on, whether it affects our concentration, attention, whether it affects our ocular system, especially our eyes. There are lots of problems related to continuous teaching process with this platform. Moreover, is it a stressful situation for the learners? There are many questions which remain unanswered for both the learners as well as for the educators. And at the same time, we, the teachers, have suddenly become techno-pedagogue without having no knowledge or expertise. At least for many of us, not all of us, some teachers are already well equipped with this new method of teaching, but in most of the cases, the teachers are not aware of this system or not well equipped. So when the pedagogy is changed, this new learning system has demanded much attention, much knowledge and expertise in this field. And there is no doubt in our country, University Grants Commission has stressed to put on some of the put on more credit to this online system apart from the offline one. So there should be a mixture of both online and offline teaching process, and we are yet to learn many of the things associated with this kind of teaching learning process. There is a second part of this. Apart from the effect on the human system, the second part is how the teaching system can be made more interesting, more interactive. Because sometimes most of the teachers, they say that I have uploaded my e-content and the student will go through the documents and they will learn this way. But human system demands some kind of interaction, uh, live interaction, and this modern pedagogy demands this kind of interaction. We are happy to announce that today we have two speakers who are who are well-known researchers in this field. One is Dr. Nilkanto Chakraborty, who is working for a long time on brain cognition. We know most of the teachers and students of biology, they know that our brain is involved in teaching learning process, but not all the participants are from biological system. So what Dr. Chakraborty will teach us, or rather will share with us the intricate details of the learning system, what happens in our brain. And the other part, Dr. Suparna Chakraborty, although she hailed from physiology as such, but she is now expert in the field of this online teaching process. And she has done her PhD in both ways, one in the field of physiology and the other in the field of this modern pedagogy or teaching learning system or online teaching system, whatever you say. And she had enormous experience in this field, and she will carry on some interactive sessions with the students as well as teachers, because in this platform we all are students. So I will be very happy that if we get some inputs from them and we can enrich our knowledge and we can become this modern day techno-pedagogue. Thank you, and I hope all the lectures will be enjoyable for all of us.
Thank you, madam. Very well said, madam. We are now becoming techno-pedagogue. Yes, sometimes really it's challenging for us to adjust with this virtual mode of teaching. Thank you once again. So, before going to the session, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Nilkanto Chakraborty. Professor Chakraborty is presently acting as head of the Department of Physiology, University of Calcutta. Professor Chakraborty acted as director in S.N. Pradhan Center for Neurosciences, University of Calcutta. He is the principal investigator, CPEPA UGC Center for Electrophysiology and Neuroimaging Studies, including mathematical modeling, in University of Calcutta. He did his MSc in 1991 in physiology from University of Calcutta and completed MPhil in 1992 in environmental science from University of Calcutta. He did his PhD in 2001 in physiology, that is in neuroendocrinology from Bose Institute, Kolkata. He had postdoctoral research experiences from 2005 to 2007 from Department of Physiology, Morehouse School of Medicine, Atlanta, USA. His area of research are molecular and cellular interaction in brain and reproductive organs during aging and neurodegenerative diseases. He worked on brain imaging and integrative physiology of cellular and molecular cognition, and also has interest in computational approach of cognitive physiology. He had around 20 publications in various international journals. He also completed research projects with grants from recognized government bodies like DST, DBT, UGC, UPA. He has reviewed several research articles in peer-reviewed international journals. He is an active member in several educational and research development committees like Institutional Animal Ethics Committee in Department of Physiology, University of Calcutta since 2011 and Institutional Human Ethical Committee, Central Body of the University of Calcutta since 2016. He acted as an advisor of PhD program under Calcutta University Industry Institute Partnership Program in Institute of Neurosciences, Kolkata, a sister university of Calcutta. So with these few words, I would like to invite Professor Chakraborty to comment the session. So over to you, sir.
Namaskar.
Yes, sir. You can start, sir.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Professor Krishna Roy for giving me an opportunity to share some my views on the e-learning. I agree with Professor Krishna Roy that yes, there's a disadvantage of class mode of teaching and the e-learning. Class mode of teaching cannot be compensated by e-learning. That's true. But the new era, it is essential to have the e-learning for due to a lot of aspects. So, in my discussion at first, I'd like to share some. Excuse me. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So first of all, I'd like to ask you that do you feel bored if you watch your favorite program or film in a television or in sitting alone in the home? Obviously not. At least I don't feel bored. So e-learning is like that, sitting alone in the home, the participant looking the instructor on the screen to learn something. Whereas in classroom teaching, it is quite different. There is a interaction, social interaction, direct interaction with the instructor and uh, the audience present in the hall. So before going to the details of the physiological aspect of this e-learning, neuroscience of the e-learning, I'd like to go through a few slides associated with the e-learning processes, education processes. You know, whatever is the mode of teaching, either classroom or in the e-learning online class teaching, the purpose is same. The purpose is, the principle is the brain-based learning. That means the instructor who is giving the instruction should have the mode, encouraging mode of instruction, should have some kind of challenging mode. And there should be different steps of evaluatory process through discussion, through giving the problem-based analytical approach, development of the concept, and ultimately to reach to the top of the successfulness. It's fine. The question is, what is the specific advantage of e-learning? From one point of view, I should mention that sometimes some peoples, some participants or the students who feel very, I mean, it is result time. not comfortable to discuss in front of a lot of people in the gathering to the instructor, the teacher. The e-learning is a mode of teaching where he or she can easily interact because he's alone. Nobody's around him or her. So he feel more comfortable and can concentrate on the learning. That's fine. A lot of, disparities between the classroom teaching and the e-learning. I also agree with Professor Krishna Roy that long time exposure to the screen may not be good for health. That's fine. But both e-learning and the class mode of teaching is fine. That can provide the better approach. But for particularly the e-learning is actually e-learning is such a tool in the present education is very which is very helpful for the neuroscientists to do research using the e-learning to find that the how brain acts. So what I have mentioned that the present teaching is brain-based. That means you should have the attentive to the task. You should judge the own thinking. You should have the emotional acceptance to the fact, and there should be a spacing between the two learning so that you can give your better output. So now, in the next few slides, I will share some experimental evidences regarding the neuroscience behind the e-learning. So there are some typical biological or neuroscientific terms like plasticity, synaptic plasticity, neural plasticity, brain plasticity. So this kind of plasticity, that is the plasticity refers the changes in the shape. What changes? The changes in the synaptic structure. Neuron is the synapse, and now synaptic plasticity that refers that the structure changes. That either the synapse remains or it will not be. What is neural plasticity? Due to changes of the synaptic structure, the connection between the neurons may remain or not, may not. What is brain plasticity? Due to changes of the neural plasticity, the network, the functional network between different areas of the brain may remain or may not. So ultimately, what is happening within the brain, the connections of different neurons in different areas of the brain and the functional integration of different areas of the brain to project some cognitive function. What is cognitive function? Response to the stimuli coming from the outside, happening the learning memory process in the brain, and your behavioral output. Whether are you accepting to me or not? It's fine. See, in this slide, in the third slide, here you can see that the synaptic plasticity, that actually the synaptic connection, the plasticity that appears in mainly three regions of the brain, that is cortex in the upper part of the brain, hippocampus, the red area here displaying in the MRI images, and the blue area, that is amygdala. So there are three brain parts which are associated with the learning memory processes, and synaptic plasticity actually occurs during learning memory process. Also, that takes little time. I agree with this, that it cannot be happen within a very short time period. But with the learning memory process, it happens. In the next slide, I'd like to mention that few neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, which is very rich in the cortical region, is associated with the synaptic plasticity. Glutamate, another excitatory neurotransmitter, which is also is responsible for synaptic plasticity in the hippocampus, the main area associated with the formation of the memory. Other one is the amygdala. That recently it has been reported. Actually, I'm very much proud that it is published by a scholar who is now doing postdoc in NCBS under Professor Sumanta Chattopadhyay. They published in Neuropsychopharmacology that the cortisol is involved in the synaptic plasticity in the amygdala. That is very interesting that this cortex, hippocampus is associated with the formation of the memory. Cortex provides the cognitive input, integration with the hippocampus for cognitive output, and amygdala actually associated with the emotional aspect. Synaptic plasticity, that means whether the synaptic connection will remain or not, that depends on electrophysiological events. When there is a long-term potentiation happens, that is a term used which is associated with the long-term memory formation. That means the connection will be strengthened. If the connection become weakened, that is called the long-term depression. Either it will remain inactive, or it will be lost. Okay. So based on the connection of the neuron connection, the between different region, the particular cell types actually remains activate for particular learning memory process. Okay. Recently, in 2020 January, it has been published in Science. Very interesting experimentation with the animal in the rat. That how in a particular in a learning memory process, particular neurons in hippocampal area. See in the blue area where particular neurons are activated, not all. And that is the theory now is coming, that the particular cell types, activation of particular cell types in a particular brain region, particularly in hippocampus, is associated with the memory formation for particular task. In the right side, I have mentioned that the synaptic plasticity by oxytocin. Oxytocin is a peptide neurohormone released. Actually, it is for posterior pituitary is fine, but it is found in all over in the brain by specialized neuron, and they are involved. Actually, it is called the love hormone. The feelings of happiness, the kindfulness, that such kind of things associated with the level of oxytocin. Another important physiological aspect is the neurogenesis. It has been reported by several journals that every day 1 neuron is produced from the stem cell in the hippocampus. Here, this red area is the dentus gyrus of the hippocampus where memory is formed. And you see in the bottom, in the left panel of the left side of the bottom, there is a stem cell which actually converts into the new neuron in the right side of the top. And it goes from down in the bottom of the area to the top of the area. There is a progression, there is a dynamic process of the neurogenesis. And such neurogenesis actually replaces 1 neuron per day in the cortex with our daily learning memory process. That is very interesting finding, because okay, fine. The next slide actually indicates that how complex if we go from spinal cord to brain, because the neuron connection that is present in the spinal cord is associated with the reflex action. It's a very simple it is our beyond our control. And if you go from spinal cord towards top side to the top of the brain, gradually you will reach. At first, you will reach the hypothalamus area, where most of the work is associated with the feelings, the thirst, the hunger, satiety, surrender. All these things actually are under control of the hippocampal areas. We can control to the certain extent. That's okay, fine. But if you go to the upper part of the brain, like amygdala, and then to the cortex, the complexity is so random that it is beyond your control. So whatever happening in the brain, in the cortex and amygdala is total.
Hello.
I think sir got disconnected. I'm sure he's going to come back.
Okay, okay. Principal madam, will you call him?
এটা তুমি চাকরি বলো।
Sir is disconnected, I think. Sir is not, he is not in the Zoom. Yes. Hello. Okay, sir, are you here?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Sir, yes, sir. Sir,
Okay,
you.
okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry for interruption.
No.
So
Okay, sir.
where we were, okay, fine,
Okay,
fine.
continue, sir.
So self realization is very important fact. The I, whenever whenever interaction between the instructor and the audience was fine, the participants. The I, this word, the feelings of I is very important. What am I doing? What I'm representing here is fine, is really acceptable or not. We are very much cautious about that. Whether whether am I updated to that particular field or not, we can criticize also. So I, this self-realization always acts. And here there is a two part. One is the unconscious selfness, and another one is the conscious selfness. So in the brain there is an area which is called sensory motor area in the top of the brain, where the sensory inputs and the motor activity, the stimulation from the environment that acts on the brain, that is beyond our control, that integrate within the brain. And the other part is the conscious, the cerebral cortex. In the upper part, you see the right side. This the upper part of the red part is the single cortex. The cortex, the below the cortex, cortex is the upper part. The integration with these two actually helps for the conscious self-realization. And self-realization is very important for the effective teaching interaction between the instructor and the participant. In the next slide, I would like to here is that I'm going to present this very interesting information that different areas of the brain in an experiment they have used, it is actually the idea of how brain acts with multitasking. Because whatever we are doing here is the multitasking. We are watching, we are hearing, we are thinking, we are interpreting the fact. So the brain is doing the multitasking. Here in the presentation, I have, you see, the subjects were exposed to 64 tasks with different combinations. So it is a huge multitasking. And they have found 264 brain regions active, functionally active. Through computational approach, they ultimately they found 10 brain regions are very intricate way they are involved for conscious output. And within these 10 brain regions, one network between the prefrontal cortex with the you see the different areas which are marked with the red color. And different the brain which are marked with the red color, they are associated with the emotional recognition, whether the fact will be accepted or rejected. If our emotional the emotional acceptance actually helps for happiness to accept the fact. I'm saying you can accept or may not. That depends on the brain network happening within your brain. Okay, and mode of presentation. My mode of presentation. Okay, fine. Practically, I have discussed in the previous few slides, is associated with the brain functional pattern from plasticity to the brain network, and that helps to find the cognitive pattern, what is happening in the brain during learning memory processes. Vice versa, the other part is that these e-learning may be are using as a tool for the neuroscientists to find the brain function. So based on the finding of the brain function, neuroscientific output, it is very essential to apply in the teaching mode for acceptance of the teaching. On the other way, this e-learning or the online teaching are being used for to find the brain function, how brain acts. I'd like to share very interesting finding. When the subjects were exposed to three very interesting clips, and there were and the brain images were taken of the most popular film, that is by Alfred Hitchcock. One was the Alfred Hitchcock, the Bang You Dead. Another film, very popular film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's very popular film, which is classic action and adventure type. And the TV serial, the subject were exposed to the TV serial, so to watch the TV serial, which is purely comedy. And compared to this different mode of emotional aspect of the film, they were exposed to the normal regular activities found in the Washington Park. So what they have found? After getting the image of the fMRI images, they did inter-subject correlation, and they have found the brain activation pattern, which part of the brain is activated. You see, in different modes, in comedy, crime, and in suspense, the activation pattern is quite different in each cases. So brain acts differentially. Brain networks, actually different kinds of brain networks are formed with response to the different emotional aspect. So it is the duty, the challenge for the instructor how to represent the fact in a very lucid way. I'm not expert of that. I feel that they may create such kind of brain network so that you can accept me. Okay, fine. Another experiment I have found very interesting, that what they did, they used a single film clips, I mean the video clips of a film, and they recognize that there are two groups of people in population who thinks holistically and other who thinks very analytically. And very interestingly, you see the brain areas within the activation of the brain areas are different for those people who are holistically think and the other people who are analytically think. So we should keep in mind on the online teaching that the mode of teaching and interaction should be in such a way that we should uh, fulfill the requirement of both two types of subjects in the population, who thinks holistically and who thinks very analytically. Lastly, I'd like to mention that neurotransmitter, mainly the three neurotransmitters. These are the aminergic neurotransmitters because I mean they are produced from the amino acids, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. The level of these three neurotransmitters actually the level varies with our emotional aspect. It has been found that the level of these three neurotransmitters remains in elevated condition when we feel very pleasant and happiness and get interest to something. Okay. So the whole thing is that whatever the mode of teaching the instructor will provide should create a specific brain network inside of the brain of the participant, so that it should be effective in learning. On the other way, the e-learning can be used, are being used to find the brain function, the results of which, the finding of the activation pattern in the brain may be helpful for better teaching mode in the online teaching. Thank you very much. Sorry for interruption. I don't know. I'm not sure whether how much clear to you about the interaction between the brain and the e-learning education. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank you, sir. For such an illuminating session, we learned a lot on neural plasticity, how brain reacts on multitasking, brain network,
Yes, please.
how it works on
So
emotional reactions.
I have completed, I think, within the right time.
Sorry, sir. And the brain network, how it works on emotional reactions and the physiological responses on e-learning. Yes, it will definitely help us analyze our teaching methodologies so that we can address holistic and analytical thinking of our students. So thank you, sir, once again. And the questions on this topic may please be asked in the chat box, and at the end we will address those to our speaker. Now we are moving to our second session. Our second speaker is Dr. Suparna Chatterjee. She is presently working as instructor and programmatic assistant in maths and science in New Mexico State University, USA. And I'm going to share her academic journey with you all. So it's a long journey, no doubt, and still she is continually updating herself in the field of teaching learning. So in a very few words, I'm sharing here her academic achievements. Dr. Suparna Chatterjee completed her MSc in Physiology from the University of Calcutta in 2004 and completed a Bachelor degree of Education from the University of Burdwan in 2007. She did her PhD in Science from Jadavpur University in the year 2012. In 2016, Dr. Chatterjee completed her MA in Education on Concentration, Curriculum and Instruction from New Mexico State University, USA. She received the Graduate Certificate on Online Teaching Learning from New Mexico State University, USA and received the Merit-Based Enhancement Award in 2019. From 2016, she is pursuing another PhD on Curriculum and Instruction, Learning Design and Technology from New Mexico State University, USA. She achieved Lavanya Prabha Bose Trust Scholarship for undergoing doctoral research in India from 2007 to 8. She received the Young Scientist Award in the Convention of Chemists and International Conference on Recent Advances in Chemistry in India in 3 consecutive years, 2008, 2009 and 10. Apart from these, she was awarded Core Values Award of Excellence for Academic Achievement in 2016. She has received College of Education Alumni Scholarship from New Mexico State University in 2017 to 18. Dr. Suparna Chatterjee is a distinguished member of Teaching Academy NMSU since 2019. She is honored as the Teaching Academy Most Distinguished Member in NMSU this year, that is 2020. Now she is associated with NMSU as an instructor and programmatic assistant in math and science education. She has published many articles, book chapters, and edited books in her academic career and has participated and presented 22 papers in many research conference, seminar, and workshop, and also acted as invited speaker in many conference and seminars. Now, with this very short introduction, I would like to invite Dr. Chatterjee to begin her talk and enlighten us. So, I'm requesting Dr. Chatterjee to take over the session. Madam?
Yes, thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Datta, for your wonderful introduction.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to be present over here today, and thank you, each one of you, for joining this webinar. And I also thank Dr. Chakraborty for the excellent presentation, which helped me to remember many of the physiological processes that I learned earlier, and also I'm pursuing related research right now. And I thank the organizing committee of the Bethune College for this organizing this international webinar. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Krishna Roy, who was an inspiration to me. So 20 years back, when I was a honors student in Shuri Vidyasagar College doing my physiology honors, she was a professor there. And during that time, for the first time, I realized that teaching is an art. And she was one of the best artists I have ever met, who used to actually paint the pictures in students' mind. So for every topic she used to teach us, she used to adopt a different way, the way she used to teach that topic. And with every topic, she used to tell us stories. She used to connect contexts, talking about her personal experiences of others, real life applications. And she used to make the topic so interesting that as soon as you enter her class, before entering, we were always thinking like, what will be today's topic? Then during the class, the interest was sustained. And after leaving the class, we used to feel stimulated to learn more about the topic. And later on, much later on, I always thought about what was going on in the classroom when Dr. Krishna Roy used to teach us physiology. What happened? Like, which actually created a transformative learning experience for me. And I remember my other peers in the physiological, in that classroom, still today we talk about it. So that was an inspiration for me. And I'm talking about this today because there is a transition in my research and teaching area. So after completing my PhD, when I started education in United States, it was not easy because as an online learner, I was first time exposed to that environment, and I was scared, I was anxious. So, but I was determined to learn the new rules of the system so that I can be an effective learner in the online media. I'll share my screen with you all. So my current research interests are online education, science education, STEM education, and I develop active learning strategies to be used in the classroom by students and also by teachers, like who are teaching school and higher education. So today's I will discuss about, like, we all will have a conversation about the online teaching and learning and what are the possibilities and practices. So the purpose of this presentation or this conversation is we will try to have an authentic conversation, because when we go as a learner in a context, in a system, we face challenges. And what are our lived experiences? Because my lived experience is very unique, is very different from another learner's experience. And we will focus this conversation on, I will not go into deep because Dr. Chakraborty excellently showed us the brain regions, the potentiation, how the schemas are generated, how the schemas are potentiated. But I'll talk a little bit about the neural networks in cognition and learning. And I'll talk in a little bit detail about the universal design for learning as a curriculum design and why we are thinking of adopting it for our online teaching learning purposes. And also I'll talk a little bit about the practice-based strategies based on my experience, because after learning about the universal design for learning principles, I applied those in my biology courses, which I teach at New Mexico State University, and also in my education courses. And I got some results which are very positive in that direction. And we'll have some recommendations for online teaching and learning. And I do not know how much time we will get for interaction, but I will try to have some interaction during my talk. So please interrupt me, please stop me if you have a question, and I will like to address that before I move forward. So before I continue, if you can please do me a favor, that is, if you can respond in this, Dr. Datta, can you type that respond?
Respondent pollev.com. This one, madam?
Yes. Slash Shuparna CHATT 586.
Okay.
So I will ask all the participants who are here, if you can please type this in your phone browser or in any other any other devices you are having where you have internet connection, if you can type this and then join the session, then join that poll, and it will ask you to join with a nickname. You can write any name. You don't have to write your name if you don't like it. And then please participate in this poll, because before I continue further, I would like to know who are the participants in this webinar. Okay, so it's showing the results, and from here, what I can see is that have you taken online courses as a student? So I can see like 45% of the 45 to 50% of the people who are present over here, they said yes, they have taken online classes, and this makes my what I will talk today discussion a little bit easier, because if you know about the online classes, it is helpful for me. And there are a certain number who says they haven't, but we will get back to it. The next poll, if you can kindly answer this, is have you taught online? Have you taught any online courses? And I can see people responding. Thank you so much for your participation. And I can see like 60% of the audience, they are telling that they have taught online, and this is very positive and encouraging. And another part, like 44% of the audience over here, they haven't taught online. Okay, so next what you will do me a favor is that tell us your story. So since all of you have, not all of you, like a certain part of this participants who are in the webinar today, you have some experience, right? So what do you think about online teaching and learning, OTL and OTL environment? So if you can once again kindly copy this link, or you cannot copy, you can type this link in your browser. What will happen is that it will open a collaborative document, interactive collaborative document, in which you can add, in which you can write. And right now I'm not getting out of the screen, so I will not go to that page. But if you can, please kindly copy this, write this link in your browser and add your reflections, add your in that collaborative document. The reason why I'm asking to tell your story, because once again, I told you that everyone's story is different. My story is very different. And you can add on the document forever. Like the document will be there for a long time. So if you're not unable to right now, but you can have access to the document later on also. So my story is that in 2014, when I started education in United States, I was scared. I was scared to use those technology tools for my own teaching, for my own learning as an online learner. But I realized that I'm consuming a lot of technology. I'm using a smartphone, I'm using the computers for connecting with people, for creating a video, posting in social media, and someone is writing there something, I'm getting involved in a chat. So ultimately, it was impacting my work habits, my work-life balance, my teaching, research, and I found that there is a positive part in it, because it was actually enhancing my skill sets. So from there, I started thinking about how can I use these tools in a better way, in a much effective way, where I can use these tools for exploration, concept development, and ultimately application. Because if I learn a lot, but if I'm not unable to apply those tools, it's not helping. And certainly I would like to know a little bit about your story. Once again, please, if you can answer this poll about, have you taught online before the global pandemic? Okay, so this is excellent. What I can see is that 90%, around 90% of the participants are telling that they did not have the taught online courses before global pandemic. And a certain of a little percentage of people are there telling that yes, they have taught, and that sounds encouraging. So I will get back into a little bit about the background, because we have seen an influx of online teaching and learning during the last decade. Institutions, universities, they are embracing online teaching and learning. And what happened is that during the emergency situation like the global pandemic, suddenly we have to move all our face-to-face courses to the online courses. Now, I just want to make it very clear that what we are doing during this pandemic or emergency situation is emergency remote learning, ERT, which is significantly different from online teaching and learning. Because online teaching and learning is a very planned process where you plan, you execute, and you implement, you revise, and then you run. So that reiteration goes on for a long period of time, versus when we are forced to, or when we have to move our face-to-face courses or traditional system courses in the online mode. So it is better to call these as emergency remote learning. And also, this significantly differs in the assessment. So online assessments, we have rigorous assessment policies for the online courses, but for the emergency remote learning, during this period, we can have some flexibility for assessments. So a fundamental question is, how do we support our instructors and learners with a better experience in the process of online teaching and learning, be it in the regular online teaching learning format or in the ERT system? So for discussing this, I would like to reflect on our experience. That's why I say that if you can please add to the document, collaborative document, it will help us understand that what are the challenges you are facing. Because if you do not talk about it, we do not know, and we don't have the option to make our experiences better. And also what we will do is that we will review the process of learning and the instructional strategies that we can apply, that we have applied, how that worked, or where it is not working. The next thing is learning. What is learning? It's a very complex phenomenon. And we talk about learning when we see there is a certain change in the behavior of the organism due to certain regularities. And what are the regularities? The regularities are the stimulus. A stimulus can be anything, like if I'm showing a video, or if I'm talking in the audio mode. So it's a stimulus. And then what moment of time? So how I am giving that stimulus, how many times? Dr. Chakraborty talked about like potentiation. So that's like if you're giving the stimulus at one time, or if you're giving the stimulus many times, or what happens when you repeat stimulus or you start a new stimulus. And there is a relation between the stimulus and our behavior. So the causal relationship actually is very much important we should understand when we are talking about learning. So learning is a result of cognition. And cognition, I'm not going into the definition of cognition, but cognition encompasses or entails many other processes. So memory, thinking, problem solving, what languages you are talking, and what is a perception. So the language For example, the language is a very important fact, because most of the internet, if you go in the internet, if you start searching anything, you will find that it's a Western centric, like mostly it's in English. So what about for a learner who is not proficient in English, or who doesn't have another word for the topic that person is searching? So learning is very complicated. Now, a developmental psychologist, Vygotsky, in the 1962, he identified three processes in learning. The first one is recognition of information, that we identify which information is important, and we collect those information either in the form of we read, we listen, we talk, and then we process that information, applying different strategies. And next, when we have the experience, then we engage with the learning task. We try to do something with the experience we have acquired during the process of gathering the information and then processing the information inside our brain. Later on, scientists, they identified the same three components, and they broadly spoke about it as recognition, strategy, and affect. And the neural substrates, that's the neural network, as recognition network, strategic network, and affective networks. So let's think about the recognition networks. What happens when we are exposed to the stimulus, visual, auditory, or someone is touching me, or I'm getting the smell of something, I remember things, right? Or even if I am having a test of something, and our cortical neurons, they interpret these signals and decode the message to us. So they recognize as a pattern. If I get the smell of a perfume, it sometimes reminds me of an event. Next is the strategy. So the strategic networks, it's in the front network in the frontal cortex. What happens is that interact what we have perceived. So I already have the information. Now the brain, after decoding it, I'm further interacting with it. So I have the message, I know what it reads like, but then when I'm interacting, I'm further getting deeper into the message, and that helps in few processes like setting goals, strategies, or planning an event, planning my learning, scheduling, and attention. So whether I'm paying attention to it or not, I'm taking decisions. And the third one is the affective network, which is the limbic system. It evaluates and prioritizes depending on the appeal and significance. So if there is a webinar which you have nothing to do, then will you attend that webinar? I believe no, because there are so many webinars going on everywhere in the world, but you are not attending everything. You are attending this because this is relevant to you. This speaks to you, that if you know more about online teaching and learning, it will help you further. So the three systems, the three networks, helps in recognizing patterns, generating patterns, and manipulating those patterns. Like, what will be my next step? I have some goals, then what I will do, whether I'm motivated to engage myself in fulfilling that goals. Now, Vygotsky, he further identified the effect, the role of affect network in learning. And think about this, this happens with every one of us. Like, we have knowledge and skills to perform some task. And when we have a task, like if I know how to type in using a computer, I will do it. Now, what happens when I have to analyze some data, like data scraping? I do not have that knowledge. So that is beyond the reach of the learner. Now, what we can do for that is that when the problems or difficulty or the level of challenge is higher for the learner to solve, we can provide guidance. And Vygotsky named this guidance as scaffolding. And this scaffolding can be done by anyone more knowledgeable than the learner. It can be the teacher, it can be the parent, it can be a colleague, and most importantly, it can be the technological tools, the devices that we are using in our everyday life. So Vygotsky named this portion as zone of proximal development, where the learner can do something with the help of another more knowledgeable person or tool. And with appropriate challenge and technology, what happens is that it motivates the learner for engaging in task. The learner starts thinking, okay, I should do this, and it changes the attitude, behavior, and final thoughts of the learner. So whether the learner is thinking of going further or shutting it down, like, no, I don't want to learn about this. This is too hard for me. So talking about the learner engaging in a task, what are the factors that actually affect learning? Is the learning environment and the individual learner characteristics. So the biological characteristics, emotional characteristics of that learner, and environmental factors influence the learning environment. You have seen, like, sometimes we have, if the room is very hot, very hot in a summer day, we sometimes, even if I'm giving a very nice lecture or interaction, but students are getting distracted because, and there is no source of fan or anything, and it happens with so many other factors in the environment. And we have to understand a primary fact that each learner is diverse. And they say that the learning process for one person is as diverse as your DNA. So the learner has differences in their developmental process, in the background from where the learner is coming. If the learner is very much exposed to a learning background, it helps a learner in further learning versus a learner who is not being exposed to an educational setup. And this, with the network, like the recognition strategy and effect, we can address these three areas through curriculum and instruction. Universal design for learning addresses the differences in the learning networks and also in the abilities of the learners, differentiated abilities of the learners. So universal design for learning, this is a curriculum framework that came into practice in the mid-90s, and it originated from the universal design in architecture concept. Because in architecture, what happens if you have a ramp instead of stairs? Then what is the difference? The ramp can be accessed by the person, like an able-bodied person who can climb the stairs, and also by the person who uses a wheelchair, versus the stairs can only be used by the person who can climb the stairs. So educational researchers and practitioners, they started developing the UD principles for learning. And it has its foundation in neuroscience, like the psychological research is going on, and the new technological development. Now, why we are thinking about technology? I'll not go in details about the neuroscience or the UD portion, but I'll talk a little bit about the technology part. So digital technology, because it gives us flexibility, and we will see in few examples how it gives us flexibility. The three principles were developed by the Center for Applied Special Technology, CAST. And CAST developed the three principles: multiple means of representation, action expression, and engagement. And not all, but most of the resources are available, free access, and 11 languages. And this is about the network, how CAST is connecting. So recognition network is talking about the what of learning, and it provides multiple means of representation through collection and processing information. Then the how of learning, that is the strategic network, it provides multiple means of engage, action, and expression. So how the students can express, what the students can, how the students can respond to a question. And next is affective network, that is the why of learning. Like why that student need to do a task. If if myself as an instructor, I know, then I will develop certain kind of strategies in the classroom that will actually engage the students through giving them challenge and motivating them to perform the task. So this is the actual uh, full thing that CAS developed for, and you can see like what is the final product. So there, in the parts of the brains, they do not work in isolation. So these parts, they are actually connected, and the three networks are connected. So you can see like there is a connection in there's a relationship in the horizontal and in the vertical direction, which ultimately makes purposeful, resourceful, and goal-directed learners. So examples, I will think about digital technology. So what do you do when you read something in your computer screen and if you find that the text is very small? You can make the text larger, right? What do you do if you feel like, okay, I'm not feeling like reading this, but I can see a YouTube video if there is one. And what are the ways, like if I ask a student to talk, not to talk, like to submit an assignment on biological principles, or like how the cardiovascular system works, what that person can do, and I give them options, like you can type your answer as a text, or you can do a video recording, or you can talk like in a podcast. And what I do when I engage the learners, so I give them tasks for engaging them, and if the students feel personally motivated, they actually complete the task, versus when the student doesn't feel motivated, they do not, they leave the task. So the benefits is that it improves access to the learner, and it personalizes the learning environment. So next, I do not know if I have enough time for doing this. But we can come back to this later on, to this slide later on. This is a poll where I would like you to, if you have access, you can go to the poll and you can write, like you can touch the quadrant if you feel that UDL principles are important and urgent for applying in the online courses. Why? Because online courses are usually, we develop the online course and we deliver the online course using technology. So there you can see the connection. So UDL gave so many options for better access of the learners, where the learners can access the materials and the learning process in a better way. And online technology, that is, they're using the tool and they're trying to develop courses. So I can see like there are a few response. Thank you so much. And you can see like mostly in the right hand corner, in the upper right hand corner, which shows that yes, it's so much urgent and so much important to apply the UDL principles in the online courses. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. And so let me talk a little bit about the online teaching context. So online teaching can be formal, like it can be in the live session, synchronous, like what we are doing right now, it's a live webinar, or it can be asynchronous when I give assignments to my students and they complete it according to their time and I give them feedback according to my time. It can be informal. that is Facebook, Twitter, blogs, where we interact with information and our thoughts, insights, and it can be practice based. So if you're going in virtual field experiences, it's more like experiential experience we are having. So let's think about it. Any one of you who thought that you never had online learning experience is not right, because what about if you're interacting in the Google, if you're interacting with the Facebook with someone, so in some way or the other, you have certain informal learning experience in the online medium. Now, this is the most important part of this whole presentation today, is 6 steps in course development and delivery using the UDL principles. And the 6 steps are: provide patterns to your students, because it will help them to understand what they will be going to do. Provide alternatives. There will be synchronous meetings and asynchronous meetings. So there will be a discussion and some quiz. Dechunk content. So divide the total information in small pieces and let your student take actions with regular breaks. Why? Because because research showed that mostly the attention span is from 5 to 7 minutes. And think about, when we teach in a classroom, sometimes we talk for more than 20 minutes. So stop at certain part and let your students do something hands-on. Let them interact with the content, with other students and with the instructor. So select topic and activities very carefully so that you can engage your students and you can engage actually their working memory. Demonstrate. If I want my students to post a video, what I will first do is that I will do a video myself and I'll post it, and then I will ask. It helps students to work on something. Step-by-step process. Communicate what you actually want them to do in a detailed way. So this is very important. How long it will take to complete a task? Please tell them. If I'm telling them to read a chapter in the book, and sometimes it takes them like 2 hours to 10 hours. Why? Because these days students, they always interact in the phone. They're having some doing some other things. So cognitive load on the student increases. And if you give them the engagement hours, it helps them to plan ahead. And content free, this is the flipped classroom concept. It is that I'm giving students a little bit work ahead of what I will be teaching them. So if they come to the classroom with a little bit idea of what I will teach in my central nervous system, and I'm teaching central nervous system in my physiology class, I give them a little task before. When they come to the classroom, what happens is that they come with questions. They come with certain confusions, and it helps them to interact with the instructor. If I ask them, okay, do you have any questions? They will not just stare at me, but what they will do is that they will try to address those questions to me. And this is the research and practice-based strategies. So we will talk a little bit about like the curriculum, the technology we'll be using, the interaction, and how it can support online learning. So this slide is very important because it summarizes the whole online course development process. I cannot go into details about it because of the time, but I can just talk a little bit. So instructor presence. So what happens in online classes? Is it enough that I give assignments to my students and that's it? No. I have to interact with my students. For my course, I do 2 announcements every week, at the start of the week and at the middle of the week. I tell them what's going on. There are discussions going on in the course during the whole week, and students' feedback. When my students submit something to me, I give them feedback and I request their feedback on my feedback, because sometimes student doesn't care, because if the instructor gave feedback, they will check that before the exam, and it doesn't work. So materials, we can adjust the materials according to the needs of the class. Patterns, I'll show you one example of how the patterns are set. Response time, respond to your students through emails, to feedback, give them grades. And what about, like, if there is an interruption, what happens during the pandemic? We cannot go to class, the students cannot go to the library, they cannot access books. So what other plans we have for these interruptions? And the response quality should be very specific. If I want my students to improve, I have to tell them what portion, what part they're lacking. I have to give them specific, clear instructions. And timely feedback is very important. It helps them to move further. And assessments, like a variety of assessments. So have some quiz and some question answers. Have some formative assessment and some summative assessment. So one thing I remember, even like 20 years back, what Dr. Krishna Roy used to do with us is that she used to do formative assessment all the time. And I never realized before I learned about the term formative assessment. So even after entering a class, sometimes she used to ask us, like, কি খেয়েছো তোমরা আজকে, বা কেউ একটা হয়তো বললো যে আমি সয়াবিন খেয়ে এসেছি এই হোটেল থেকে। উনি আমাদের বলতেন যে জানো তো কাঁচা সয়াবিন খেলে কি হয়, it has trypsin inhibitor and it will impair your digestive process. And হয়তো আমার right now সেই বায়োকেমিক্যাল প্রসেসটার কথা মনে নেই, কিন্তু ওনার এই পোর্শনটার কথা মনে আছে, and that was actually a formative assessment for me, because later on আমি ঠিক বাইরে গিয়ে আমি ওইটার সম্পর্কে আরো খুঁজতে শুরু করলাম যে কাঁচা সয়াবিনকে কুক, মানে হিট এবং ওয়েট সিস্টেমে কুক না করলে কি কি প্রবলেমস হতে পারে। So this was very important, and we can do this through conversations, through quiz and many other things. So this is what I was talking about, the pattern. So see, my course has been divided into different topics, like maker spaces, team STEM, and you can see all the games in education and TPAC, and you can see like the 3.1, it is the overview. It is giving them an overview. So 3.1, 5.1, 6.1 in all the modules is talking about the overview. 3.2, 5.2 and 6.2, it is the live webinars that we will be having in that course. So, and also it has the date and it has number of points. So if students are attending a live webinar, they will be getting 10 points. Next is the readings and their contributions. So I am actually helping my students to identify the patterns of this classroom. Next is learner characteristics. Think about what unique characteristics your learner have. What skill set they are bringing in your classroom. And I will get back to this with an example, what I do in my classroom. And you can let them play games and tell stories about their interests, and it will help you as an instructor to develop activities. Next is, when I'm giving articles or when I'm giving some content materials to my students, what I do is that I see, this is a PDF. I always give them in the PDF format because this is interactive. They can use this PDF for interacting. These are the tools they can use for highlighting. I give them some prompts. So this is a question I give them, and then there is a part where they can answer it. So, and also I can share this document. So this is technology helping us that to make it interactive. And when I tell them, I read this paper first myself, and I found that it took me 2 hours to read this whole paper. And when I'm giving this task to my students, I give them 50% more time what I took. So I give them 3 hours for reading this paper and interacting with this whole document. It helps students to plan ahead. And this is the engagement hours I'm talking about. I have a big Excel sheet where I have everything like the activities, how much time it will take for them. And then there is a part where students can add, because if I'm assuming that it will take 2.5 hours and it just takes 30 hours for most of my students in the class, I will rethink it about that assignment, and I can reduce that time for that task. Next is learner interaction. So this is very important. So just think about the PDF I told them. When the learner is reading a part of it and they're answering something there, they're actually interacting with the content. And then they submit all their papers in the assignment area, and other learners see those points, and they interact with the learners. And they interact with me because I'm giving them feedback, like where they're standing. So I believe this is the most important part that I always use in my classroom is the learner content, learner instructor, and learner interaction. Next is learning process and dynamic environment. So this learning process is very dynamic. And think about what Dr. Chakraborty showed us in that picture of the neuromodule potential for neuromodulation. So if there was a drive, the reflex, there was a drive, and then then the motivation, and then the cognition happened. So think about novel stimuli, think about a story, think about an event, what can help your students to act like a hook, to keep their attention span intact for a certain period of time. I'm not going into details of any of these. And next is professional development. I believe this is very important. So practice yourself. See for the resources around you, leverage on those resources, communicate with other people who have a better understanding of it. For example, if there is a training going on in another state and every college decides to send one faculty for that training, and what happens? When that faculty comes back to the college, that faculty can train all other faculty in the college. So think about how we can develop the ways to train and teach ourselves. And next, there is a poll. So I do not know if I have time. If I have time later on, I'll come back to it. And again, this is the same thing what I actually do in my classroom, in my course. So for example, when I'm planning an activity, what I do is that before that, I develop a learning profile, class profile, to find out what my students, what are their teaching and learning styles. If there's a visual learner in my classroom, I will always try to post some images, pictures, videos. Versus if there is a kinesthetic learner in my classroom, I'll try to give them a hands-on models for completing an assignment and their tech toolkit. So instructor accessibility, become accessible to your students, help them. Let them email you, text you, Twitter, comments, inbox. So make them feel that you are there for helping them with their task. And another important part is, everything is important over here, but I'm just touching the most important part, communication. So communicate your students with special care, because this is not a face-to-face classroom. They do not see your facial expression and your tone when you are writing an email. So be careful giving them some more details about how you want them to be successful. And this is a reflection. This is a project one of my students did under me, and this is her YouTube video. And if we have time later on, I can show you the video. It's very motivating because she has a disability and she has 5 children with some sort of disability, mental or physical. And what she did in this project is that she was amazing. She developed games using technological apps like Exploder. She made video games for those disabled kids, for kids, helping them learning. And this is another project that I was doing in my face-to-face course with the pre-service teachers and with the students. So that I was doing the same thing, and this is a question I have in the poll. So when I did the same project with my middle school students and with the pre-service teachers, and both groups got equal benefits of learning, do you feel that I'm talking true or false? I do not see the poll, but yes, thank you so much. Thank you for being such a motivation. Okay, 50% or 30% people think that false. No, it's 100% true, because you know what I did? I changed the level of challenge for them. So when pre-service teachers were doing, making a robot using this magnetic electrical cubelets, I gave them 5 criteria. So the level of challenge was, they were at the level 5 challenge mode, versus when these school students were making that robot, I just gave them 1 criteria. So they're at the level 1 of challenge. So see, I modified my instruction for the 2 different sets of students. And this is the same thing I was doing the Makerspace project, but this is in the online medium. And you can see like what happens when they are doing in face-to-face course. If I go and talk, they tell me little bits of things that they do not write in their answers. And when they're doing it online, they use the app phrase.it and they insert it what they think about it, like what they would have talked with me if they would have done in the face-to-face classroom. And this is another, when I was teaching DNA structure and identification in my introductory biology course, many of the students, they were not biology majors, criminal justice, astronomy, so their interest level were very low. But what happened, I started the class with the case of Roy Brown, who was convicted of killing a social worker, and he spent 15 years in prison, and he was convicted based on bite mark analysis. But after 15 years, he was set free because of the DNA evidence. So if I start with this story, it gives my students a better, a better attention thing. Like, okay, I need to know more about DNA structure and how the DNA can be used for some identifying criminals. And I'll not go into the next one. And this is the last thing that I want to talk is the digital literacy spectrum. So previously I talked about the course, I talked about the delivery method, and now I'm talking about the I. You remember in the previous presentation, sir mentioned that this I is very important, and because it gives us some identity. And what happens is that digital literacy is that like I have a Word document and I know how to use that Word document. Digital fluency is that when I am, or in an Excel sheet, I'm gathering data, that is my digital literacy. And when I'm using the data, interpreting the data, that is digital fluency. And now I'm using the data to create an app, to create a video game for my math students, that's critical digital literacy. So being an individual, I am actually in a continuum. I'm continuously moving because the app I'm using today, maybe I'm digitally fluent in it, but what happens if that app is upgraded and it is changed totally? So again, I do not know anything about it, and I am moved to the digital literacy spectrum and digital literacy portion of the spectrum. So as instructors, it's a very important thing that you always analyze where you are standing in this digital literacy spectrum, because we need to update ourselves first before we teach our students in the online. And the critical theme is that think of yourself as an instructor, where you are standing and what update you need. And as learners, think of you, what you can do, how you can increase your interaction and collaboration, develop relationship, and build your learning community. Next is recommendation is that design and deliver using the principles of UDL guidelines. Reach for resources. There are thousands of free resources accessible all around the world. So use those. Look for progress over perfection. See what you can do with little bits of steps. Assessments. Every time your student is giving you a feedback, use that for revising your instructions, for making it better. And implementation at multi-levels. So first train and teach yourself, and then train and teach your colleagues who are around you and learn from them. and then at the institutional level. So if you find a program very fruitful for you, go and talk with the administrators of that institution. Tell them that we need this for improving our process of teaching. And I would like to conclude telling you that an online class does not teach itself. It is you, the person who teaches an online class. So be responsible for creating that space for your learners by engaging them in relevant activities, in interesting activities, and understanding and creating that conversation, that authentic dialogue space. Also, our praxis can be conducive to build a collaborative community where we can imagine online education for a diverse society, for a diverse classroom. And this is another poll I have, but I believe I do not have time. And then, okay, so please, if you can answer this poll, it will be very helpful for me. So how helpful is this webinar for teaching and learning in the online environment? Okay, I see it's 100% and it's something is like helpful and very helpful. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate this. And next is, I'm feeling better for participating as a learner or instructor in the online environment. Okay, this is amazing. So 100% of the participants feel that they are feeling better now. And the last thing is that, what is your take-home message from this webinar today? You can write that in the chat, in the Google document I provided with a link, and you can tweet me in the Twitter. And please use these hashtags like hashtag online teaching, hashtag online learning, and my handle is cshuparna. So once you write your tweet, you just add these things. And now it's for you to have questions for me. And these are some of the references I have consulted, and these are some of the free resources. And thank you so much. So should I stop sharing?
Thank you, madam. Yes, thank you for such an illuminating session. You gave a good insight on learning, no doubt. And we learned a lot on the learning behavior, how it is regulated by different stimuli, and what are the different networking processes involved in effective learning. No doubt, it is very much important to implement scaffolding in teaching learning process. Moreover, for effective learning environment is important, yes, and students need to be involved or engaged actively, either in the form of poll or discussion, as you said. So we require a need-based, interactive, activity-based learning platform. And as a teacher, we need to be updated ourselves digitally to reach our students. Yes, thank you, madam.
Thank you so much. And once again, I apologize for time. I believe I took more time.
No, madam, it's okay. We have managed. Now we will move forward to our question answer session. And due to shortage of time, I'm taking few questions. So shall I proceed?
Shutapa?
Yes, madam.
May I request you to take some questions from students first? If there are some questions from our students, that should be dealt with first.
Okay, madam, as the questions are dropped in the chat box, but I don't know whether they are
teachers.
Yeah, teacher or student. So I'm just jotting down some questions which have arrived first. So my first question to the first speaker is, what is the role of serotonin in enjoyable learning? Sir?
Actually, enjoyable learning associated with the elevated level. Serotonin is the modulator. Serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These are the modulator, not the excitatory. That depends on whether it will excite or behave as excitatory or inhibitory. That depends on the receptor. So they are mainly modulator, not the excitatory, not inhibitory. So the level, it has been found that the joyful excitement and interest is associated with elevated level of the blood brain levels of neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now the second question is to Madam, what should be the maximum duration of an online class that both the teacher and student don't get stressed according to human brain cognition?
Okay, so as I told you, like our attention span mostly is from 5 to 7 minutes. So, but I do classes for 2 hours and 2.5 hours. So how I do is that I have regular breaks in between my information session. I have different types of activities. I have activities for small group discussion. I have activities for large group discussions. I have activities where they are doing something in the worksheet, polls, and numerous types of activities. So what happens is that you think in this way, like my 2 hours class is not a 2 hour lecture session. It is divided into different types of action and information sessions. So even if it is still 2 hours, but I give them the breaks. And sometimes, usually what I do is that if I teach for 10 minutes, I give them 2 minutes break, versus if I'm teaching for 5 minutes, I give them 1 minute break. So, this is kind of depends upon what I'm teaching, whom I'm teaching, and who are the students in the classroom.
Okay, madam, my one question is, you have shown that there is a poll. So can you suggest any platform by which we can conduct this kind of poll? I know one platform that is Edmodo. So can you suggest any other platform?
Okay, so let me tell you something. Usually what I do is that when I'm teaching in the Zoom or Adobe Connect platform, I use the polls there. So yesterday I had a number of polls, but I realized that if I want to do the polls with you, I'll not be able to use it because I'm not the owner of this Zoom webinar, what you are hosting. So suddenly, instantly what I had to do is that I was searching and I found this everywhere poll. This is very easy to, and this has add-ins with the PowerPoint system. And you can use Kahoot. Kahoot is more like a game type thing. So it's more used in the school systems, because young learners, they are like, you can incorporate music and you can incorporate different types of games. But I like this everywhere poll because I had so many options there, and it's very easy and it has add-ins. So if you go to the PowerPoint, you can see like insert, design. So there is a button which talks about everywhere polls, and it's very easy to use for if you're presenting something in the class.
Okay, thank you, madam. And the next question is there any mechanism to increase the strength of mind and intellect of the students which help them in education?
So, yes, of course. So the first thing that I will not talk about intellect because I do not know how you define intellect or how you define mind. But as an educator, what I can think is that how do I engage myself or my students better? So think about your profile, your learning profile, what kind of learner you are. For me, I'm a very visual learner. I love to see images, graphs, rather than text, because reading a text is different kind of stimulation for me than seeing a video or seeing a diagram. So find out what kind of learner you are, then find out what actually worked for it. Because sometimes if I assume that I'm a visual learner, but I found that actually auditory things helps me. Lecture, someone is lecturing, or the podcast. So find it out, then test it, and then try some things like where you are challenged and you are creating something. So there is a difference between consuming the technology and so consumer and producer. So if I'm watching a movie or a TV serial, I'm just a consumer. But when I'm developing a game, then I'm a producer. So think about how your learner characteristics work with technology.
So the second question to Sir is, how neurogenesis is related to e-learning? How neurogenesis is related to e-learning?
Okay, good question. Actually, in the adult brain, it was questionable that whether the neurogenesis actually happens within the adult brain or not. That has been found. Yes, in hippocampus, in certain areas of the brain, the new neurons forms from the stem cells, and those neurons replaces mainly the cortical neurons, and that helps in new generation of the new connections. So in adult condition, I mean, learning is a continuous process. With a continuous learning effort, that actually changes the network in the brain and can influence the internal loop in the brain to convert the stem cells, particularly in the hippocampus area, which is associated with the memory formation, to replace the neural cell, one cell per day to the cortical area, which is associated with the higher cognitive function. So that happens, but still the research is going on. There are so many reports you can check in the international journal. There are so many reports that are coming with the adult neurogenesis and associated with the learning memory process and the behavioral aspect.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we are running out of time, and the questions, almost all are answered, are attended. And if you have any query, you can contact sir or madam. And now we are moving towards our next session. So we just come to the end of the session, and I'm sure that all of us are benefited from this knowledge sharing platform. And for today's webinar, I am expressing my thankfulness to our principal madam for her initiative and constant encouragement and involvement in today's webinar, not only for today's session, but also the series of such information exchange programs continuously organized by our several departments in association with IQAC Bethune College. I'm also thankful to IQAC coordinator Dr. Kamalkanti Shom and our Teacher Council Secretary, Dr. Amita Kaur, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this program. So we are delighted to have such informative sessions today, and I'm sure all of us are benefited by today's webinar. Now moving to the next session, I request Dr. Ashok Kumar Das, Head Department of Botany, to deliver the vote of thanks and officially conclude the session. So I request Dr. Ashok Kumar Das, sir. Ashok da? Hello. Hello. Akash da, please check Ashok da is here or not.
I don't seem to find him. I think he got disconnected somehow. I don't see him around. Maybe I really don't see him around. Sorry on that.
Okay, okay. So may I request Dr. Kamalkanti Shom, our IQAC coordinator, to officially deliver the vote of thanks. Sir, are you here? It seems that Ashok da is disconnected. So Kamalda, do you want to? Yes, yes. Kamalda, please say something and officially conclude.
Just a minute. Huh?
Okay, okay, sir. Okay. Yes, these are the technical glitches we are always facing while conducting our online classes. So this is quite obvious, and we have to manage all these things.
Hello, Sutopa, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
A very good evening. Thank you all, honorable speakers, respected principal madam, my colleagues, and all viewers who are virtually present in this webinar. Uh, IQAC Bethune College, that is the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, has organized so many seminars during this period over the last 2 months or so. And this lockdown or pandemic situation, the lockdown caused by this pandemic situation, I think it's a positive sign. If this lockdown situations were not arisen, we could not have arranged so many webinars, informative webinars physically. It was virtually very difficult. For example, Suparna madam delivered an excellent talk, and physically arranging this talk would have been very difficult. So this is one positive side of this pandemic, I think. In today's webinar, the topic was new mode of online teaching and learning, prospects and limitations in the light of human responses. First of all, on behalf of Bethune College, on behalf of IQAC, and on behalf of all of us at Bethune College, I sincerely express my gratitude to the speakers. The first speaker, Professor Nilkanta Chakraborty, HOD of Department of Physiology, University of Calcutta. Dr. Chatterjee very beautifully explained the basic difference between classroom teaching and online teaching. And from the neuroscientist's point of view, the recognition system, the response of the brain, how it takes place, very beautifully explained. Sir, our sincere thanks and gratitude to you for sparing your valuable times. Then the second speaker, actually I am speechless. She explained very beautifully, and she gave us valuable suggestions how we can utilize this online platform effectively for both teachers and students. And she recommended many things, and I hope all of us will try to implement at least some part of it. And I also sincerely thank our principal, Professor Krishna Roy. Actually, in the start of our lecture, Dr. Suparna Chatterjee told us a hitherto unknown area of Dr. Krishna Roy. Actually, Professor Krishna Roy joined our government service later, so we didn't know much about her earlier career. So it was a new thing to us. So on behalf of Bethune College, I express my sincere thanks to all the organizers, all members of IQAC, all the participants, all uh, staff and teachers of Bethune College, and all of us of Bethune College. And finally, I thank Mr. Akash Mondal of Braindrops for providing excellent technical support. Without his support, this webinar could not have been successful. And my special thanks, finally, my special thanks once again to Dr. Chatterjee, Suparna Chatterjee. In spite of, I don't know what is the time zone, what is the time difference. I think it's very odd hours. In India, it's evening, it's a very good, comfortable hour for us. But for her, it's presumably very odd hours. In spite of such odd hours, she spared her valuable time. So, on behalf of all of us at Bethune College, I sincerely once again thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your nice talk. And I just want to request Dr. Suparna Chatterjee to say something or any goodbye note in Spanish because you are a beginner in Spanish language course. So, madam, would you like to say any goodbye note for us in Spanish?
So I would like to say te amo. Te amo means love you all, because I believe in the pedagogy of love and love, care, and ethics, which is I'm a social constructivist theoretically, and so pedagogy. There is nothing beyond the pedagogy of love, care, and ethics. When you love your students, when you love what you do, that's beyond everything. So te amo.
Te amo. Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you,
everyone.
Suparna.
Thank you so much. Thank you, madam.
ভালো থেকো।
হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম, আপনি
Yes.
প্রণাম নেবেন।
হ্যাঁ, ভালো
Thank
থেকো।
you. Thank you, Suparna. Thank you. Wonderful lecture.
Wonderful. Yes.
Thank you
you.
so much for all of your patience and
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
sir.
sir.
thank you,
Thank
sir.
Thank you, sir.
সুপর্ণা, তোমার ওখানে এখন কটা বাজে? সকাল কটা?
আমার এখানে এখন 7:30।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে।
It's a comfortable day. Okay.
ওকে।
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Peter, madam. So can I leave now?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to all of you.
হ্যাঁ, thank you, Dr. Chakraborty, for the wonderful physiological session, because I'm originally a physiology student and I love physiology.
Yes.
So when you were showing the slides, you were showing the imaging things, it was so much a connection I was feeling. And thank you for the wonderful lecture.
You love physiology. That's why you can think in different way.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much.
Because brain physiology helps to think about it.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Okay.
And the feedback form is given in the chat box. Kindly do fill it to get your e-certificate. So now I am signing off. Stay happy, stay well. Bye.
Oh.